Welcome. You're tuning in to Fallen Fruit, and today is our very first podcast. Today we're talking about quantum hypnosis healing therapy, tarot, astrology, the dark goddess, and everything else in between. We hope you enjoy.
So hey everyone, what's up? My name is Lynette, and I am a quantum healing hypnosis practitioner. And that simply is hypnosis work that deals with the subconscious. Science shows that when we use hypnosis and when we get into this relaxed state, our brain waves change. And so what happens is we can kind of tap into our memories and our belief systems. And beyond that, we can actually tap into what we call the quantum field or the spirit realm. And so my work is to help people to connect with, number one, what may be stopping them, what their limitations are, what their fears are. And then beyond that, we can go to activating our gifts, our talents. And so it's really about bringing people completely online. So because I've had some history with plant medicine, I've always wanted to pursue a technique that allowed people to go deeper that may not want to do a psychedelic or want to take that route. So I actually found this technique, and it assists people in, again, bringing to the light what is in the dark. And when we can do that, people can really power up and really align with what they're supposed to be doing. So that's my main work. I'm also a dancer. I'm a ritualist, so I want to bring more of that, more of the ceremonial aspect of our ancient past, right? So they did a lot of dancing and singing, and so what I'm here to do is I'm here to bridge the ancient with the modern, and so through dance is one of the ways that I do that. I'm also a mom. I have a 20-year-old son, and I'm into traveling. So that's just a little bit about me.
And we've experienced the quantum technique facilitated
we've
by
both
Lynette.
had it done. So we can attest that, it's dope, for real. Like, it opened up a lot of blocks that I was experiencing and things that I know I needed to work to, and just truths that I needed to say out loud and kind of give life to. And I was able to do that. So
Dope.
Thanks.
Yeah, it's a really powerful technique if anyone's interested in diving into their subconscious and, really facing some of those programs kind of running in the background and getting clear on what they're saying. Lynette's technique is definitely for you. And I know that, just to tease people a little bit on something that we did, the three of us did a quantum technique together, and Stephanie came through with some very powerful messages for us. So you never know what's going to come through in this technique. And I know that in my one-on-one session with Lynette, some big breakthroughs came through that have been immensely helpful even up till today. And we did that session, a year ago?
Over a year ago.
Yeah.
That's dope.
Yeah. So Stephanie, tell us a little bit about you.
So I am a mom to an 11 and 9-year-old. They're both boys, my little earth sons. And I'm also a poet. I work for a nonprofit where I'm able to teach poetry in high schools and things like that. Assist other artists and poets in getting work. It's really important as artists that we are able to also eat off of that.
Mm-hmm.
We're trying to do away with the starving artist.
Right.
Yeah.
So it's really dope to help that community that I'm such a big part of, to even give back, not just my writing, but my time and talents. I think talents, we'll see.
I think yes.
All right. And I do other writing, like freelance articles. I really love writing about my own culture and experience. So it's dope that there are outlets out there that allow me to do that. And then I'm also a tarot reader. So that's kind of how I align myself with spirit. And really try to dive deep, learning the symbolism of the cards and just how they can help in everyday life and how they fit into, the world that we live in now, as opposed to maybe in ancient times what those meanings were, trying to put a modern twist on a ancient technique. But yeah, I'm also all about getting into ceremony and doing rituals and just bringing the spirituality full circle.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I want to add that Stephanie is a revolutionary.
Oh,
She, that was one of the first things I picked up from her, is that she has this soft, beautiful heart, right? But she knows how to bring the fire when it's time. So I definitely know they're going to be doing some big things, and I'm going to be right behind you. So
that means
you're super dope.
So true.
I do have Viva la Revolucion tattooed on my back. So
No,
there it is. I
at
didn't know that.
19, I was like, I got the, I was like, this is it. This is the mission. So prayers up. Let's do it.
Yes. Now is the time.
And what about you, Catherine, our resident astrology queen?
Yeah. So I'm an astrologer. That's kind of my thing. And I'm also really passionate about ceremony and women gathering together. And that's one of the reasons why I'm so excited to be sharing space with the two of you. And we've been sharing a lot of space lately, which makes me so happy. But yeah, I'm really passionate about women gathering and sacred space and sacred sisterhood. I'm really, really into that, really grateful when I can plug into that. And as an astrologer, yeah, I'm always happy to talk about astrology. I love reading charts for people. I write horoscopes and I do lectures, and word on the street is I'm going to be teaching kind of soon too. So stay tuned.
Yeah. And, Catherine is a quantum traveler.
Yeah.
Catherine was the very first person that I did a session with. And I knew that the universe aligned me with her because she can kind of travel out there. And Catherine is, she can kind of really tap into, the field and the information that's out there that's in the unseen. So, yeah.
I think your eye is really open.
Oh, sometimes it's like too open.
It's all bug-eyed, like.
Yeah. From my brain is just one big eye.
It's not a bad thing.
Yeah. So let's get into some questions. I have some questions for you all. Okay. So Stephanie, how long have you been keeping an altar?
I think ever since I was a kid, like I just intentionally would put things places, and I always kind of collected trinkets and things from my parents. I would like find things in my mom's room, and I had this my dad's like Italian, so like straight off the airplane. And when I was 10 months old, my parents took me back to Italy to meet. That's where all of his family is. So we went back to meet them, and we got like this plastic bottle that looks like the Virgin Mary, and it's just filled with holy water from the Vatican. So that was always on the center of my dresser with like little stones, little itty bitty things. I was really into Egypt and archaeology when I was little. So I had tiny pyramids and like god and goddess statues. So I think, ever since I was a kid, I've just been
always like, on.
Let me put shit places.
Intentionally. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Lynette, do you keep an altar?
I do. I think for me, it was more like maybe like 5 or so years ago. I grew up in Catholic school. And so I think it's interesting. A lot of people in this field talk about that, they've been kind of tapped in. I don't think I was, unless I don't remember. I actually had an Akashic record reading, and I was going through this really kind of deep kind of karmic relationship, and she suggested that I create this altar and have this like ritual to kind of dissolve some of that attachment. And so that was kind of like my first exposure to it. So
cool.
Yep.
Wait, so I want to know a little bit more. So what did someone bring you in contact with this Akashic record reader, or how did that work?
Let me think back. I honestly do not remember. It was, she wasn't local. So it was someone that I actually just connected with over the phone. And I think it was through a local reader. Now that I'm thinking back, I think it was Cynthia. Her name is Cynthia. She actually has a store in Chagrin Falls. And she does, you guys
was
know
it
what I'm
that
talking about?
like All Matters store?
Yes.
Okay.
I'm pretty sure the recommendation came from her.
Okay.
I may have had a reading from her as well.
Yeah.
That's dope.
Yeah.
She was one on like in my beginning, like in the beginning of this like path, so to speak. She was one of the first people that I connected with. So
Interesting.
mm-hmm.
So I grew up in Chagrin Falls, and my grandparents still live there. And my grandma may have connected me with her. I know I had an Akashic record reading gifted to me from my grandma.
Mm-hmm.
So segueing into that, so my grandparents are magical. So that's how I kind of got onto this path a little bit. It's not that they gave, it's not like they led me to this path. I started to find the path, and then they were kind of there, and I started realizing like, oh, you guys have these books on your bookshelf. You guys have astrology books on your shelf, and you guys have Jesus and the Aquarian Age on your bookshelf. And you guys have Jane channeling Seth, like the Seth Chronicles or whatever that book was.
Yeah.
It was like a really big, it was a popular book in the 80s or 90s about someone channeling another being.
Yeah.
So yeah, my grandparents are into that.
They were like astral projecting and like, well,
yeah, well that brings me to another point, is it's like, as women, when we like your children that you carried in your womb, they came from the egg that you were born with.
Right.
So your children were also in your mother's womb. So I feel connected to my grandma in that way, because I know that I grew in my mom's body, but I began in my grandmother's.
Right.
that's crazy to think. Like, I mean, I know that's true and that's like science, but like I've never thought about it to that level.
Right.
Damn,
like that
Cassie,
literal
she's
level.
got the knowledge.
Right. And they also say that like connection kind of skips. So like we have a connection deeply with our grandparents. Obviously, like we have this connection with our parents, but there's something about my grandmother too that is like super special to me. So I'm wondering what that's about too.
Mine was like my grandfather and grandmother.
Yeah.
But yeah.
I want to know.
All right.
Yeah. We've got to figure that one out.
All right, tell me what's your connection to your grandparents?
My grandma, so she was like just a badass, like Scorpio, the oldest of 11 kids, and like her mom died really young, so she had to like step into that role really early. She was tough, like definitely handed out the whoopings with the chancla, and
How many did you get? How many chancla whippings did you get?
Too many to count. One time she hit me with a knife. And I was like, I'm pretty sure you just stabbed me. And she's like, it's not stab. And I was like, oh, okay.
You wrote a poem about this.
I did
recently.
write a poem about it. I did. Because I was like, that's funny.
Yeah.
Because that's like one of my favorite stories about her. That she was tough. But like dinner was done every day at 3. And it was like, this Puerto Rican meal that she spent since like 9 a.m. cooking. Our lunches were always packed. We were decked out when it came to the seasons, had the mittens, the scarf, the hat, like she was on it.
You were ready.
She was definitely tough, and she liked to dance and party. She was a good time, but people were like, oh, your grandma told it like it was, and you know what that means. She was like big bitch energy, and I love it.
I love that.
I was
too.
thinking bitch, but I'm glad you said that.
Yeah,
right?
you're like, I can't call somebody
Right.
else's grandma a bitch, because I'm like, what you say?
Scorpios can definitely be bitches.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
She was like real tough. And my grandpa was like the lover. Like, he would try to like, put his hands on her when she was laying down. She'd be like, get off me. What about your grandma, Lynette?
My grandmother, so her father owned a farm in Puerto Rico, and she always tells the story that when she was in 3rd grade, she had to quit school because she had to actually cook and prepare meals for the workers.
Wow.
So that was a really big thing. Like, even she's 90 years old, and she still talks about that. So she felt slighted.
Yeah.
My grandmother's the type of person that if there's a person that doesn't like her, I question that person. She's like super just beautiful. She has like this heavenly angelic energy to her, and when she's not talking, she sings all the time. So it's almost like I always feel like she's like in 2 worlds at once. She was deeply spiritual, religious, so she wasn't into like the esoteric or but she just had this, like, if she puts out a prayer, you can pretty much bank on whatever the prayer was, it's done.
Wow.
So she just was really beautiful, and she was just the type of person that it was always about her husband, her family. And now that she's in her 90s, she's lost her filters. So she went from like being like super like it's about everyone else, and now she just, if she says something or she thinks something, she'll say it. She doesn't really care. So I think she's earned it.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
I feel like at that age, you can say whatever.
Whatever.
And like, that, cool.
Yeah.
All right. That's
Yeah.
how you feel.
Right.
Like, you've earned that right.
Yeah, like
I'm
she'll-
just trying to get there.
Yeah, she'll
Yeah.
ask you like
Yeah.
super personal questions like, oh, does your son's father pay child support? Or like,
Yeah. And you're like, as a matter of fact, Grandma.
That's that crone energy.
Yes. Yeah. You're like, I've done the work. I can say what I want. Chill out.
Yeah. Yeah. And you know that like they already have the answer half the time. They're just like trying to get you
yeah,
to say it, basically.
yeah,
Yeah.
she calls people out.
Oh,
Yeah.
I love it.
Yeah,
Yeah. Speak their mind.
yeah.
Oh. So. Okay. So, Stephanie, you write a lot of poetry.
I do.
Have you always written poetry?
Again, since I was like younger, I used to write like short stories when I was like 10. I was really obsessed with like books on tape and just books in general, and I was like, I could do this. And so I started keeping a notebook and just like writing short stories. And then as I became like a teenager, I carried a book around which just was like, I guess you could say poems, but in my head they were like punk emo song lyrics, because
Yeah.
I was that kid. And I was like super angsty and wrote poems that were way too fucking dramatic. You know, all those teenage feelings. But yeah, I had that book. I had it for a while. I think I don't know if I threw it away recently because I was like, oh, I can't.
No.
It was really like, it was a bit much.
I understand. I've kept a journal my whole life. Like,
Yeah.
I could catalog my entire life through journals, except I had this one journal from when I was in high school, and I threw it away because I thought I was like purging a part of myself or
Yeah.
like taking control of my life and like deleting that chapter basically. But I wish I had it now. It was so
I do
deep.
remember a lot of them. That's the weird thing, is like I have these poems memorized, because even so I had my kids really young, so I was 21 when I had my oldest son. That's not like really young.
I was 21.
Yeah, but I mean, like, that's young.
Yeah.
So I would keep the notebook and I would go back to it and I would like read it all the time. But I wasn't writing because I couldn't get there. Like, emotionally, I was so into like, I have this baby, like, I have to make sure it stays alive.
Of course.
So like, that was like, my brain didn't have time for anything else, I feel like. So I definitely got away from it for a while. And then once the kids were a little bit older, it was a few years ago that I was like, let's do this again. And I haven't looked back. It's been like crazy the past few years, like getting things published and like saying like, oh, I'm going to get published in that zine like this year. And then it happened. And then feeling confident enough to put out like big submissions that I'm still waiting on. So fingers crossed, y'all.
Yeah.
But like being asked to go like read, in New York. And I was like, yeah.
And you work with
love
some
it.
teens too.
Yes. So the nonprofit I work for, we're all about like youth voice. So going especially into the schools here in Cleveland, where it's like largely communities of color that don't necessarily get, a lot of arts funding. We do one high school where they have no art class, like
Wow.
no creative, nothing. They don't even have a sports team. They do like intramural sports against each other. So it's like really, it's all focused on like computer and math. But still, it's just, so we were able to come in and like take over their English class like 2 days a week and get these kids to like write poems and just like share their stories and share their experiences and expose them to like modern poetry, because a lot of the things they're taught in like high school English classes are about like old, just like dead white man poets or like Emily Dickinson.
Right.
So being able to show them like poets that look like them, but like share experience with them, come from places like them. So that's really dope. So that work is like, that's my heart for sure.
I love it.
I mean, the
That's
spirit
awesome.
as well. Like I want to find a way to kind of like merge that all into one, like, let's heal the world.
Yep.
Yeah, because that's
Revolution.
encouraging for people to learn if there's something that calls their interest, something that they can relate to.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome. So, Lynette, how did you get into the quantum healing?
So just to take a step back, actually, when I was like 15, I started to experience like super intense depression. I went from like Catholic school and then I went to like a public school. So that was like, it was just a big change for me. And so I got out of high school and I just started to kind of look at like, what is happening? Like, why do I feel like this? Like, I just started to really, I was trying to understand it. And so I had a friend who, when I was like in my early 20s, put me on to Iya Lavanza. And I read one of her books and I just really resonated with her. And so I started just doing this deep dive of like mind-body connection, what is this internal journey that I'm experiencing? It's like, why is it that I'm feeling this way no matter what my life looks like on the outside? And so fast forward again, I actually went to a metaphysical school that was out on the West Coast. And it just really gave me a really great overview of different religions and different ways of life. And the person that actually founded the school ended up opening up a retreat center in Ecuador. And so that began my plant medicine journey. And I always tell that story because once I started having those ceremonies, I wanted to bring that kind of healing to other people, knowing that the plant medicine ceremony wasn't for everyone. Not everyone wants to do psychedelics. Not everyone understands it. A lot of people are afraid of it. And so I wanted to figure out, how can I act as the psychedelic? How can I be the catalyst? And then I came into the work of Dolores Cannon. And she used to do hypnosis back in like the 60s when it was just used for like weight loss, quitting smoking. And she started seeing people pop into past lives and not only having these memories, but their personality would change in the session. The way they spoke would change in the session. So she started, she looked at herself as like a scientist. Like she was really curious and she started to try to understand like what is happening here. And so she started being able to gain access to information about UFOs and metaphysics, and people were experiencing like instant healing, all of that. And so when I came across the work, I knew that was it. Like this technique will take us beyond just talking about something. Talk therapy is fantastic. And then there's a limit, And so once I actually came across the work, and I also identified with the idea of being, just open-minded, like what is like an explorer of consciousness. And so I started to do, I started to practice the technique, and it was just amazing to see people. We all have access to this information, and to be able to see it, to see people access this information, to see people figure out why they have certain fears, people letting go of like sex addictions, or pain in the body, or understand why they were afraid to go outside because they got hit by a car in a past life and they were carrying this fear of being, just these crazy things. So that's how I came across. It's just trying to figure out how to heal. And I want to understand how this universe works.
Yeah.
Like what is going on behind the scenes.
Yeah. Yeah. I know that, in our session, I had something like pretty traumatic happen to me, and I was processing basically some mourning around friendships. And I was taken into a past life where I was a warrior, and this was like so vivid. And when you're a warrior in ancient times, like you depend on your friends. your friends are the only family you have, and you are loyal to one another, and you have each other's back no matter what.
It's life or death. Yeah.
It was. And that's why I felt so like I got stabbed in the heart when I got betrayed by some friends. And I couldn't figure out, like, you know, why is this hitting me so hard? But that past life review was just, it was so powerful. It was so powerful. And now I have understanding, but all these other questions too, like how, you know what I mean? Like about this technique and about past lives and all of that.
Yeah, it's really, the way I look at it is like, I think that most of us don't understand how to use this human vessel to its capacity. You know, we've been taught, like, you eat food, you drink water, you go to sleep, you go to work. But really, man, there's so much more.
So much more.
Right.
Yeah.
And so it's just, for me, it's about helping people unlock their own situation. Like, you know, it's great when someone can tell us and answer our questions, but I feel like when you're able to do it yourself and you're able to experience it, there's something about that I think is needed. And I think that when people experience that type of kind of out of body, or at least out of this life that we see, I think people become more confident. And people begin to understand, like, I'm a lot more than I thought I was. I have a lot more power. I have access to a lot more wisdom. And so it's just empowering, I think.
Very.
Yeah. It's like you being accountable. You know, people can tell you things, but it's like, it's always like until you go through it.
Right.
So it's like, it does. I can attest, because I've also had a session with you, and it was like, oh, like, I'm standing in my own damn way.
Right.
You know, let me get out of my way and, like, do the things I want to do. Like, who manifests this fear? It's like, I do. You know, this fear isn't coming from some outside source. It's all internal. So like you said, it's like taking a step into that consciousness where you get out of the wheel that we're all sort of stuck in, because society and capitalism and and like, so like once we can step out of that mindset of being in that wheel and having to survive, because essentially it's like we can't get out of that mindset all the time. Like, we have to grind. But when you are able to take those moments, take those few hours and be like, oh shit, like, then I feel like you can really unlock some powerful door.
Totally. And that's actually something I've been thinking a lot about lately, is like, you have to grind. And sometimes, like, for example, like, I'm working a lot, but I like everything I'm doing, but it still takes a toll on you a little bit. You know, I'm happy reading for clients. I also do hair. I'm happy to do people's hair, but I'm taking on a lot of psychic debris. And even when you're on your phone, like, you're taking in a lot of information. And so we need consciousness. We need, you know, things that go beyond the surface, things that go a little bit deeper, so that we can do some more of that clearing and create stillness to be with our consciousness. So one of the most powerful things that I've experienced and can experience regularly for, like, maintenance and everything, I think going deep with quantum sessions and plant medicine and you know, beyond, like, that is really, really good if you want to get, like, you know, if you want to go in.
Right.
But like for maintenance and everything, Kundalini yoga has been really powerful for me, because there's a lot of techniques that we use with, like, breath and mantra, and all these different things are basically to get your mind to pause, and you do get into that subconscious space, and you figure yourself out a little bit, and you kind of, you know, sometimes you do a practice that's so potent that you're just like, man, I just went to therapy just now. Like, I cleared some shit.
Right.
And you store stuff in your body too. So you mentioned, you know, you've been able to help people clear out chronic pain in their body, you know, but we need modalities available to us. And I wish everyone could have access.
Yeah. And I think making it more popular, and also, you know, like the commodifying of spirituality, some people feel heavy against, but I think it's important so that it becomes accessible, so that, you know, like Lynette and I have talked about, knowing who to charge, when to charge, what to charge, and being aligned with that, so that you can, when people need help, and maybe they're not able to afford it, that it can still have access to it, that there's always a way.
Right.
We find that with, like Western medicine and hospitals and Medicare, and it's like, well, maybe if they could cover these things that we know make us feel good,
Right.
inside and outside.
Yeah.
Like, we have all seen the effects. If
Right.
anybody's like on their spiritual path and like takes it seriously and tries to stay up on it, or even intends to, sometimes if somebody's dealing with chronic pain, they're like, I can't do a moon ceremony or, a clearing bath or things like that. Like, I'm tired.
Right.
But maybe even sitting down and like making a tea with intended herbs and just like getting on the couch and like writing it out, just the intent. I feel like intention behind everything is how we can kind of move this kind of healing and things like that forward. Like, like tarot's my way. And
Right.
I would love to find a way to just make it accessible. I encourage people, who I read for, I'm like, go get your own deck,
Right.
You can find them they have deck swaps, they have, used ones.
Yeah.
Get one and just tap into it yourself, play with your intuition, like build that relationship.
Yeah. I think we're moving into a time that we're taking more responsibility for our own well-being. And I think that I encourage people to invest in themselves. And I know that, for someone, it could be $20. For someone else, it could be $300. And we have to find what works for us. But I think that many of us will spend money on, going out to eat and getting our hair done and our nails done. But when someone is offering a service that could help them at the soul level, that sometimes we don't want to spend money for that. It's so abstract, right?
Yeah.
But I think we're coming into a place where people are realizing that no one is coming to save you.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, we've got to help each other, right? It's
Yeah.
not like we're out here by ourselves, but we have to take some responsibility.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that one of the reasons why people are moving more toward that is because of the, socio-political climate that we're in, when healthcare is so damn expensive, and it's like, all right, well, this doctor is spending 10 minutes with me and I don't really feel heard. And so we're finding that healing in other ways.
Just praying to the ancestors sometimes. You're like,
Help me out.
Let me get a teaspoonful of honey, some cinnamon, and a prayer.
Yeah.
That's my healthcare plan.
Yeah, no doubt. And I think Western medicine has segregated, the mind, the body. And so now we're coming into a place where we're understanding, like, yo, these emotions are creating some sort of like disharmony. You know what I mean? So
yeah, big time.
Yeah.
Big time.
Yeah, we're getting there.
We're getting there.
We're getting there.
And the dark goddess can help us.
Yes.
Yo.
I think it's time. I think the cards are calling.
The cards? All right. So we have this dark goddess deck. So there are different goddesses from all sorts of different backgrounds, cultures, places, civilizations. It's a beautiful deck. It's actually called the Dark Goddess Oracle cards. So Catherine, you're gonna go first.
Oh,
You're gonna like cut it up,
all right.
infuse that energy,
Chop it up.
Yeah, I can help.
Okay. Just once?
Do what feels right.
Oh, okay. We're
You're
all
in
putting our
charge.
energy into it?
Yeah.
Okay.
But you got to draw yours.
Okay. Arishka Gale.
Ooh, Arishka Gale.
Yes.
Do you know about this goddess?
I know about Arishka Gale.
Okay.
Yeah, she is from Mesopotamia, I believe.
Yeah.
Is that right?
It said Sumerian, but yeah.
Sumerian.
So
yeah, I know a little bit about Arishka Gale.
there's the little guidebook that came with it.
Her okay, so I'm just going to read her subtext here. It says that Arishka Gale represents coercion, forcing to conform, enticement, in its darkest form. Never jump to each demand. Threats be gone, now take a stand. By the power of the dark goddess in me, protection in place, blessed be. Ooh, I like that. I like the sound of that. So...
Ooh, she's making that heater go. She's like, I'm here. Tell them about me.
So I remember a story about Arishka Gale. One of the first astrology conferences I went to, a woman named Claudia Bader was giving a lecture on Pluto and the underworld. So Arishka Gale has to do with the underworld. And there is an ancient story about her. I wish I could remember it. I'll have to check back.
You have to
No, you're
circle back
fine.
on
That's
that.
okay.
Yeah.
You want to sit with that card? We can go so Lynette can pick
Yeah,
hers.
let's
and
do
then
that.
let's
Let's do
sit with
that.
the cards for a minute and then we'll come back and
That sounds good. I'm going to read on this for a
Yeah.
second.
the cards are like gilded silver on the side and
I
it looks
like
really
that.
dope watching Lynette shuffle them.
I was noticing that with
because
you.
also her fingernails are this like amazing turquoise color. So
All right, so the Morrigan,
ooh,
sovereignty. So I've never heard of this before.
Morgan. I read a book. It was actually it was a controversial book. It was called Witches of America.
Okay.
It was by Alex Marr. And it was controversial because she really befriended these women, telling them that, you know, she was interested in the craft. I don't know what happened to those letters. And following the path and like learning. And it kind of just turned into this like book of just like talking about people's lives and telling their personal stories. And she was like still wasn't convinced at the end. So it was a little, you know, I don't know. I guess you have to read it for yourself and decide. There was also a movie that went with it. Mm-hmm. But one of the women that she was following around and like kind of staying with and talking to was a woman who was a priestess of the Morrigan. And she had her own like taxidermied crow that she kept. Like the crow is a really big symbol, and she's like a warrior.
Isn't this like a Germanic?
I believe so.
Yeah.
I believe so. Yeah, this woman was, you know, out in the wilderness.
Yeah, I feel like that name is similar to like
Not that you
Morgana Le
can't,
Fay
yeah.
from the King Arthur stories. But
Oh yeah.
Morgana, that is like a name that you hear a lot of variations of.
Okay.
So it's almost like the name Mary in the Christian tradition. Like there's a lot of Marys. Like Mary could almost mean Mar, like body of water, you know, like woman.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm wondering if the Morrigan is like kind of in that vein.
What jumps out for me is that I was just telling them a story earlier about a situation that kind of pissed me off, but this is talking about kind of knowing when to take a stand and what not to.
Oh.
And, you know, I'm a Pisces sun and moon, Sagittarius rising. So there's always this internal battle. Like when I was younger, I think I just was like that fire. Like I would just, you know, I'm going in, I'm going to react. I'll think about it later. And then as I started to try to be more aware and conscious, you know, then I started to kind of really taper down and try to be compassionate. And I feel like I'm at this point where I want to marry the two.
Mm-hmm.
I want to
Yeah.
know when to bring the fire and when not. And I'm still not clear because my initial reaction to a lot is to just go for the head.
Yeah.
But I don't want to do that. But I also think that with that hesitation, I sometimes allow things to go when I should not allow things to kind of just go.
Oh, I can relate to that.
So I got to figure that one out.
I mean, is it almost like, could you tailor a response that you feel like, here's my way of telling them off, but in a way that people aren't going to like get on social media and be like, hey, yo, Lynette's a healer, but she crazy.
She crazy. You know what? I feel like I've got to figure it out.
Yeah.
I really do, because I feel like I always think about why someone does something, right? So it's like, oh, they're doing that because, they're in fear. But sometimes I'm like, fuck that. Like, you can't cross me like that though. Like, that's not cool. Like, you can't just do that.
Yeah.
And sometimes when you come from a really loving place, people don't regard that and honor that when they feel like they can just do whatever.
Right.
And so anyway, yeah.
Yeah, some people take that as like almost like weakness,
Right.
being nice, which is a shame because it would be great. I would love to just be nice all the time. I would love that, but that doesn't work.
No.
That does not work. Sometimes you have to, coming from a place of love, tell someone that they're being shitty
Yeah.
so that they can grow.
Yeah.
And chances are they know it. They know it.
I mean, I'm really, I guess, bad at that too. Like, I'll come out the neck kind of crazy to people. And I don't have a filter because I feel like the Sun,
Sagittarius.
yeah, Aries rising,
Oh.
it's just like double fire.
Right.
And the
Yeah.
tongue just, it's like, yeah.
You give it to them.
Yeah. But then in the Libra moon, it's like, no, pipe down, like
Yeah,
balance. You can't
totally.
always react like that. Only sometimes.
Yeah. Sometimes.
Sometimes. All right. I got to read up on this card, though.
What did you get?
I got Tiamat. I hope
Ooh.
I'm saying that right.
I've heard of her before, but I don't
Tiamat.
know.
She might be Sumerian as well. I think Tiamat is like ancient.
Right.
I'm about to find
I almost feel like that's
her.
associated with an Anunnaki, but I could
Yes.
be wrong. Am I
No,
right?
you're right.
Okay.
You're right. You're
Is
right.
it? Oh.
I feel
I mean,
like
I'm
that.
getting those vibes from this card, but I gotta. It's like in the back of the book.
And-
Here it is.
Okay.
So she is Babylonian. So the card says control. She has this dope like dragon draped over her
Let's
neck. She
see.
looks like, yeah,
Whoa.
girl with the dragon
Yeah.
persona.
Whoa.
Yeah.
So it said she dwelled in the ocean. She gave birth to the first generation of creation beings, dragons and serpents, which is crazy because I've been for like the past 2 years, like serpents and snakes have been following me. So I did a little vision quest like 2 New Years ago.
Right.
And I used DMT. Okay.
DMT.
I don't know who's listening. The government's
The
going to come
government.
for me.
The Babylonians.
So, yeah. So, and that you kind of travel through this tunnel
Yeah.
to get to this like big visualization and this journey that essentially happens in like 15 minutes, but it feels like a lifetime.
Right.
So anyway, you travel essentially. People talk about a tube. So mine was always black snake skin, like black snakes just like in and out of each other. And they've been following me. I even found a little plastic black snake on a sidewalk in Chicago when I was just walking down the street. Of course, I picked it up. Like my altar is mostly like things I found on the sidewalk and trash.
Cool. That's a Scorpio thing.
Yeah, but so serpents, and upon her death, her body was used to form the land and sky, ensuring her influence over all beings that inhabit Earth. Tiamat lives on via the forces of nature. So it's about reclaiming your self-power, investigating past lives to heal fears of persecution. So I think that's like a universal thing because I feel like
Absolutely.
as women, that's one of the biggest things because our creation story says that,
Right.
you know,
Right.
like we're taught that from jump.
Yeah.
Like, no, you're the problem. Like what you did.
Yeah, it's a power thing. I know that as I've explored my past lives, a lot of it revolved around a power struggle between the masculine and the feminine. So, you know, a man would come in and kind of trick me out of my power, and then I would be in the next life, I would be a prostitute, and then I would abuse the man and use my sexuality to kind of, you know, manipulate him and steal from him. So it's like, yeah,
Take your
You're like a
power back.
Robin, like a, you know, Robin Hooker.
Yeah,
I love it.
I was
I love it.
I was fucking good at it. Okay.
Yeah.
But the thing
It's
is
our new
that
band.
So yeah, there was a lot of, for me, there was a lot of trauma, a lot of violence. So that's why a lot of women, I feel, we have a challenge in knowing when to use our power, when it's appropriate, when it feels good, when it's not coming from a place of like we're being triggered, but we're consciously using the power. So I think a lot of us have kind of some work to do around that, at least some awareness. So yeah, a lot of that power struggle thing.
Yeah. And speaking of this, I think it kind of leads into another big thing that we've been talking a lot about is like one of the bigger creation myths that, you know, pervades a good chunk of the world. And in the Jewish faith, they recognize that before Eve, there was Lilith. Mm-hmm. And that's something that we have been talking a lot about lately, which I definitely want to get into. But Tiamat, I believe in the Babylonian tradition, wasn't she like the earth goddess?
I don't know.
Yeah, I'm unfamiliar.
We're going to have to
look that up.
here.
Yeah, we are.
We're going to have to come back next time with like book reports on each of our goddesses.
Yep.
Yes.
Totally.
We should, that's what we should do. We should spend time
That's what we're
with
gonna
each
do.
of our cards.
I like it.
We'll
I
do
love
that.
it. Until we get through the whole deck.
Yes.
Yeah.
I'm into it.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah. And I think that's a really great segue into something that we're going to be working on. We're going to be holding a retreat soon, and we're going to have some more solid details coming. But, you know, as Catherine has said, we've explored and have connected with Lilith. And I think Catherine, she's going to talk a little bit about her story, and then Stephanie's going to talk about her story. What we did is we did a quantum healing session where we intended to connect with Lilith to understand her story. Who is she? What was her message? What was her story? We want to not only just dig for our own personal information, but we want to be kind of an advocate. We want to bring information to other women because, as you'll hear in the stories that they share, you know, we all have that theme in some way. So a lot of times when we have certain experiences, or we have our dark night of the soul, or we have our challenges, we don't understand why it may be happening. We may feel isolated. We may feel like we did something wrong, or we're missing the mark. But when we begin to understand that many women have gone through these stories or these challenges just in different ways, there's something that we can take and feel a sense of peace and a sense of just, okay, this isn't just me not aligned in my life. This is something that we deal with, and it goes back to Lilith.
Yeah. And so basically, for anyone who isn't familiar with Lilith, so in the Bible, first of all, the Bible was written by men. Sorry if you don't agree, then this show isn't for you.
Yeah.
But so it was written by men, and it's been translated and redacted and edited over and over again to fit the political and social agendas of whoever's in power. And we all went to school and we learned about Henry VIII, like basically like changing it for his own like lustful conquests, you know. But anyway, so we know that is a truth. And again, in the Jewish tradition, they're familiar with Lilith. So in the Christian Bible, there's Adam and Eve is made from Adam. Well, before that, Adam and Lilith were made as equals. And then Lilith was like, come on, bitch, let me ride you. And he's like, no, I don't want none of that because I don't feel like a big man. And so she was like, fuck that. You don't know what you're missing because my pussy is popping.
Yeah, she was HBIC energy like all day. And
Yeah.
Adam was not ready.
He was not ready.
He was like, God.
Yeah, he was uninitiated and he was a fool. And he doesn't know what he's missing.
Yeah.
Wait, in Lilith's words, he's a dick.
He's a dick.
She did, well, you know.
We'll get to that.
She said it. But.
She said it. And so anyways, Lilith decided to leave she wasn't happy. She's like, I'm not going to be in a relationship where I'm not valued, where I'm not an equal. And then Adam basically like whined to God, according to the story. And then they were like, all right, fine. And so they like
I like how like heaven has a human resources department and they're like, complaint filed, all right.
Okay. So then they like supposedly, according to the story, made Eve out of Adam's rib. But I think that could even be debated. But
Totally
anyways,
debated.
the big takeaway from this story is that, you know, most women who go to Catholic school, and a lot of us did, you know, I went to after school Catholic school
I
as
did.
well.
Yeah, all of them, the sacraments.
Yeah. And they teach that we're lesser than, and that our role is to serve. And I think that kind of distorts a lot of our perception as we mature and start to have relationships. And it definitely distorts it, even if you don't fully subscribe to it. So anyways, it's like a huge eye opener to discover this being Lilith, this archetype of Lilith, who is the dark goddess, you know, because she's been shunned and bullshit has been lied, you know, her story hasn't been told. And also her story has been twisted, you know, in some traditions, she's like a
succubus,
yeah,
like a demon, who like will come
kill your children,
right, and like fuck your dude at night, like she's like the worst side piece ever. She gonna eat your baby and fuck your man. The worst,
but
side,
like hashtag
that's like
the worst side piece ever.
And that's how they've made her out to be. Like if you are powerful, if you do kind of take your own agency into your own hands and say like, I will not stand for this, you're seen as like a difficult woman, a bitch, you know,
crazy.
People like to say nasty woman. It's like, well, whatever you want to call it, bad bitch, that's Lilith energy.
And basically we're connecting with Lilith because people are ready to connect with Lilith. Like some of these names that we're saying, like bad bitch energy, you know, people are ready for that. There's a need for it.
It's already being exhibited. Like, you know, people are like on the internet and, you know, making these memes, and it's like, like these Beyonce, these Blue Ivy memes. It's like, yes, like I'm in charge. I am not lesser than, I'm equal to, but I'm also more than. Like, I created you. I didn't come for your rib. You came from my womb. So it's much,
And it's like, to me, when you can embrace that type of energy, you also have the strength to be submissive when you want to be.
Yes.
It doesn't have to always be like, I want to just go against the grain for the sake of going against the grain. It's like, listen, like I can be in my power, but I also, if I'm with a man that I feel honors me, and I can kind of let my hair down a little bit and let him lead, and I trust him, I'm okay with that. Like, it's okay. Like, we can play both roles. So I think that sometimes when we talk about this energy, people always think like, that's where you stay. You're like in that energy all the time.
No,
that's not true. This is just about being able to flow in and out of that. And also to understand that part of ourselves, right? Because a lot of us, when you shun something and you don't want to like look at it, it tends to fester and manifest in the most terrible ways. So this is just about bringing that to the surface, integrating it, understanding ourselves more. And I think that when we can understand ourselves a little bit more, we don't judge people as much. It's just like, yo, that's just Catherine. Like, that's kind of how she is. It's not like that gives you like a ticket to just be like an asshole to people, but it's just like, no, like we understand like, yo, that's just how she is. And we're going to let her do that. Like, that's just what it is. So I think it just helps us to understand ourselves more, and it helps us to get along with people better.
I think especially during this like rise of consciousness around like Lilith and the divine masculine and feminine and the equal balance of those two energies, because we all have them. I think that's why society freaks out about, you know, like our trans brothers and sisters
Right.
and like non-binary folks and people who are just non-gender conforming.
Right.
And like throwing that whole notion out the window. Like I can be fucking both.
Right.
I could be one day, I could be one the next day. Like
Exactly.
I could flip the script. Like it is mine. It is
Right.
fluid.
Right.
And people freak out about it because they're like, oh, that's not the way the Bible intended. And it's like,
You have to be this way.
right.
This is the regular. This is normal.
Right.
You got to do this.
Right.
Yeah.
And I, even, Native American people honored the Two-Spirit. And there are different cultures who have different words for this type of energy. And it's like watching this like almost like divine balance within one physical being is like, people's heads start exploding and shit.
Yeah.
And you're like,
True.
no, like that's just, if that's the energy that's within that vessel, like beautiful, let it come out. I wish we could all just be more. And I think once we get in balance with like what the true identity and what gender means and sexuality means, that we can become more comfortable. And this is just the way we exist now.
Yeah.
The way we were always meant to exist. But this book written all this time
Yeah.
ago is like, yo, that's an old book.
We've been asleep.
Yeah.
And we've been had.
Do we still use the same like medical textbooks from like the 18? Are people still bloodletting and like using leeches? I mean, bloodletting I have seen for like ancient practices.
Like
and,
acupuncture still works.
Right,
but-
right. But some
Yeah.
of this stuff like that they were doing, you're like, no, like, could you imagine if we were still having babies like sedated and like knocked out? Was it twilight birth? Like that has
Yeah.
changed. So why not our views on gender and sexuality?
And yeah, it is changing and we're ready for it and we're
Yeah.
in it. And that's the revolution that's taking place right now. You know, Uranus has been in Aries for the last 7 years and it's leaving. It's going into Taurus. But one of the biggest things that's been characterized by this 7-year transit is the rise of the individual and the claiming of oneself and one's sovereignty. And sovereignty.
Yeah,
Oh my
the
gosh.
Morgan. She was like, sovereignty,
Yes.
I'm here.
Yes. So that's been a big theme in the last 7 years. And Uranus has been squaring off with Pluto for much of that time. And Pluto's been in Capricorn. And Capricorn represents like the societal structures, like the things that in a collective way, not for like individual sign, but in the collective, Capricorn really represents like the societal structures, the government, all of that. And so the individual has been literally squaring off with these structures, and Pluto wants to transform. It wants to uproot the decay, the things that aren't serving us anymore, and it wants to rebirth something new. And so that's why things have been so chaotic for the last 7 years. Really.
And I think that's why people gravitate to the dark goddess, because that's what she does, right? She will come in and she will completely destroy something that doesn't serve that person. So, a lot of us, we don't want to go through that. It's when that energy comes in, it's destructive, it's confusing, it can be painful. But these are all things that, like, when it's all said and done, when we look back, we're like, yo, that's dope. Like, I needed that. I'm in this much better place. Like, my life is aligning, and it's all good when you're out of it. It's just that it's that tough love. It's like she's coming in or Pluto's coming in. It's that tough love to break up.
Well, the Pluto energy can also take form as like Kali. This dark goddess energy, and Kali is often depicted as just like woman, her tongue's out, she's raging, she's destroying, but she's also birthing at the same time.
I didn't know that. I didn't know she was birthing at the same time.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I was speaking to a woman, I was doing her hair the other day. I hadn't seen her since she was pregnant. So she had a baby. And, a lot of women don't share the nitty-gritty details of what it's like to have a brand new baby. But, I always appreciate when people share it with me, because I hope that's something I get to experience one day. And nobody really prepares you for it until you're pregnant, probably. But anyway, she was telling me like basically what it's like to have a newborn in the house, and like you're topless and things are just like, there's you're wearing a diaper, you're trying to figure out diapers, there's like blood and poop everywhere.
Your boobs are leaking, like
it's chaos.
Yeah,
it's dark.
chaos.
It's dark goddess. And so I was hoping that, I don't know, you guys could probably relate to that because you guys have kids.
Yeah.
But
Yeah. And I would love, Catherine, for you to tell the story about when Lilith decided to leave Adam.
Oh.
Because that story resonated with me so much.
I hope
and
she wants you to tell it.
I love that. And then maybe Stephanie can follow up, because I feel like these stories and the experiences that you guys had, I feel like that's going to bring so much comfort to people and kind of validating wherever they are and what they've gone through.
So just to like,
she lit the fireplace. She's like, tell them.
Right.
well, that's how I met Lilith.
Yeah.
Was on the beach. You know, Lynette took me into the hypnotic state, and you kind of go to like a happy place, or you go somewhere first to kind of start out. And then I was led to the beach where I met Lilith, and she was by a fire. And also, this is like, you know, I'm tapping into the collective consciousness, but this is also in a way that like my brain can perceive it.
Yeah.
So, you know, other people, for those who are curious, like, can perceive her in a similar or different way. But anyways, Lilith takes me through this journey, and one of the most intense experiences that she showed me was the time that she left Adam, and she was basically cast out of Eden, which was like, you know, as we're told, like a beautiful place where they had everything they needed. And it's kind of similar, like in modern day, like if you were to get a divorce or you were to leave your abusive, wealthy husband, and then like you are starting from scratch, basically. Yeah. So she found herself in a tree, and this is known in a lot of the myths of Lilith. Like, she lived in a tree, and I saw this tree, and one of the things that she showed me is like literally what she went through, just like feeling alone and just crying at the sky and just wondering, what did I say? What did
you mentioned that she felt like the sun would never come up.
That was it.
And she had to really tap into her intuition to just eat. What do I eat? Yeah. So she really had to, she was disconnected from like external nourishment. She really had to figure it out on her own.
Yeah. So that brings us to 2 points. So a lot of times when you go into this quantum state, you think you remember, and you remember when you come right out of it, but then like later on you kind of don't. You have to go back and listen to the tape. But yeah, that was a really powerful moment. She felt like the sun would never shine, and she had to kind of just trust her own inner guidance. And that's another aspect of the dark goddess, is listening to that primal instinct, really trusting that, because a lot of the societal structures in place kind of teach us to kind of go against that a little bit. So.
Yeah. And you know, for me, that story hit me because I know I've had times where I thought whatever struggle I was in, I didn't see it ending.
Yeah.
And so for her to say she didn't know that the sun was ever going to come up, and then it did. And then you can talk about like what happened after the sun came up.
Oh, yeah. After the sun came up, things got really beautiful for Lilith. So she ended up moving to a city where she started using some of the gifts that she gleaned from having to rely on her own instincts. You know, she was an herbalist. And I think, you know, some other people have touched on this, that Lilith may have been an herbalist who was also able to, you know, one of the things she was able to do was help women take control of their bodies. She was able to help people have abortions, which is where some of the storylines come in about her being like a baby snatcher, basically. But yeah, she was basically able to become a healer and become autonomous and take care of herself and take care of other women. And one of the things that came through too was that she was a part of like a sexual healing temple, basically. So
And she actually, you saw her in a temple, right, in Egypt potentially.
yeah.
So for
Yeah.
me, that's just about like what everyone's talking about, like this
Yeah.
ascension process. So she had to really dig deep. She was in this primal survival mode.
Yeah.
She was alone. She was tired, maybe hopeless at some point.
Yes.
And then when that day came where the sun finally came up, then her life opened up, but she wouldn't have been able to get to that point unless she potentially went through those struggles.
Right.
And unless she took a risk and said, like, no, I'm
True.
not accepting that.
Made that decision to say, hey, it may not be like all gravy,
Yeah.
but I owe it to myself. I can't be there anymore.
Right. Like
So-
a dark goddess isn't going to settle for less, basically.
And it's crazy how, like, you know, you think about it, like the sun may never come up. It's like, well, how do you even know what light is unless you know dark?
Right.
Like,
Yeah.
you can't. So people who, that's why I kind of get a little agitated maybe about this whole like love and light, like we're the love and light tribe. For one, don't say tribe, you know. And it's just like, no, you have to know what darkness is to even know what light is.
Yeah.
Like, you have to know both. And that doesn't mean like you're out here putting, you know, crazy curses on people and
No.
doing all that work in the dark. And people like to associate the dark with like evil, but we need it. Just like we need the winter, just like we need those times of introspection and to go within.
Right.
You know,
Oh,
the
yeah.
moon and the sun. It's all about that balance.
Yeah.
It's
She-
so archetypal.
Yeah.
She wouldn't have learned how to work with herbs
Right.
if she wasn't relying on her own intuition and had to do that for survival.
Right.
Yeah.
She wouldn't have.
So if you feel like you're in that dark place, it's almost like there's something there for it. It's
Yeah.
almost like it may feel very alone, and you may feel like, man, I don't even know how I'm going to eat, how I'm going to get by.
Right.
But what you learn during that time, I feel like, is so powerful to take you to that next phase of your life.
Yeah, and to me, when to your point, talking about the love and light, I think if people subscribe to that and something goes wrong, then there's shame. Like, oh, I must have fucked up
Yeah.
somewhere.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Well, yeah. I mean, that's the thing, is that a lot of times when a woman takes that risk, you
Yeah.
know, people talk shit.
Yeah. Right.
Like they,
Yeah.
it's because somewhere in their psyche, somewhere in their body, like they kind of wish that they could do that.
Yeah, because
Right.
a lot of people would rather, and people, you see this every day in marriages, people staying at the wrong jobs. It's like, no one wants anyone to think anything is wrong. Everything's good. Everything's good over
We
here.
good over
They
here.
could be freaking drinking themselves to sleep, super unhappy, dying inside. But as long as it looks good on the outside, and I think that that's not sustainable, and
No.
we're seeing that obviously.
Right.
Like, people are like, I'm gonna perish on
Yeah.
some level. So
Right.
I feel like it takes courage to be like, listen, I'm messy right now. I really don't know what's going on. I
Yeah.
don't know how I'm going to get out of this, but I'm just taking it moment by moment. And I just feel like that story just is so empowering. And to me, it almost is like, okay, if my ancestors had moments like this, then I can also go through this. I also have the strength to go through this.
Right.
So yeah, super dope. Yeah. And you can, Stephanie, I mean, when she was in touch with what I believe is the divine feminine, we could feel. I looked over at Catherine. Catherine was spaced out. Her eyes were like, she was in the quantum field. And I knew like it wasn't
feeling
just
it.
me. Well, I love that because you never know. Like, I know what I'm feeling, right? But I don't know if
Right.
so it's like, anyway, yeah, you could talk about that. Like, the energy that came through.
Yeah.
Was
It
so
was different.
beautiful.
Like, it wasn't just Lilith. Like,
Right.
it felt like the energy that she embodies. But it was almost like this force of like nature. It was like woman who became wind, and talked more about collectively, like how, like you said, like unsustainable this is, even like our political climate. And, you know, we've seen with like global warming and just the turn that our planet's been taking. It is, you know, like we talked about the wind and about the hurricane and sort of, you know, talking about, you said your grandfather, he was on the island of Puerto Rico when Hurricane Maria came, and said, you know, it sounded like a crying woman,
like a woman that was screaming.
Yeah.
Like he called it a monstro, a
Yeah.
monster.
Yeah. And I heard people, one of my students, he actually moved here because of the hurricane.
Yeah.
And he was like, I've never heard anything like it.
Right.
He was like the men in my family had like fear in their eyes, and it is because this woman has been so disrespected. California is just, the forest is lighting itself on fire, like she's upset, and that was that energy that I was getting. It's like people aren't honoring me, like the woman is being shamed, the woman is being sort of like hung out to dry. Like people have gotten away from this matriarchal, everybody's fighting, there's war, men are in charge. And it's not just like men can never be in charge, but they've been in charge long enough. Like, let's flip the script. Like, it's time. Let's just see what somebody else can do.
Right. And around the same time of these physical, natural disasters and hurricanes and everything, like we've seen a huge women uprising, you know, specifically with like the Me Too movement, people coming forward and saying like, this is not acceptable. Like we're speaking out. And even just in general, like I'm seeing so many badass women just like being themselves and creating a legacy.
Women
out
are
of
leading
it.
the movement in like all their communities, on the food front, on the economical front, politically. You may not agree with these women's politics. They may be problematic, but even to just see them there, it's like we're making progress. Like they're not perfect, but at least there's hope. Like at least we're getting ourselves in the right direction.
Right.
Well said.
And these women in these communities are starting up art galleries, are starting up wellness centers, are starting up pop-up shops, doing zines, just every creative front. Women are there. They're leading the movement. Mothers breastfeeding a baby, giving a speech about, gentrification and trying to call people together. Like it is, it's like, what a time to be alive. Almost.
It's inspiring.
It is.
Yeah. It gives us permission, right? Because like if we all waited for us to have like all of the answers and for us to be perfect and packaged really pretty, we wouldn't do anything. Right. So it's like we're stepping out and we're saying, hey, we don't have all the answers, but we're going to just go and we're going to continue to adapt and to correct and to learn. I think that we all can take something from that, because a lot of us don't want to step out because we don't want to be wrong.
Right.
We don't want to
say the wrong thing.
Right. Exactly.
Well, that's
so I think
Eve
it's
energy.
Like I'm here for it. Like honestly, if I say something wrong, if I slip up, if I fuck up, if I call you the wrong pronoun, if I say the wrong thing, call me out. Be like, hey, just so you know,
right,
this was wrong. Here's the correct one. I'll be like, dope. Let's use that.
I'm happy to
forward.
Correct.
Yeah. And I feel like people just need, the sense of community needs to be together. Like I have your back. Like I'm telling you this because I love you.
Right.
Like that sense of tough love. Women want to be packaged and pretty and don't want to be told like, yo, you said some fucked up shit. Like
it's okay to be wrong.
Yeah. Like,
Right.
But let's talk about it. Let's work it out. And that's what I hope, we can even do here. And that's what I love about working with the two of you, is that we are, very different in the stages of our life and our own spiritual path and our own backgrounds.
Right.
And we come together to kind of say, like, let's learn together. Like, let's learn together. Let's call other people in,
Yeah.
As much as we want to teach about the dark goddess and things like that. Like, I want to learn from other women. Like, I want to learn how they cope, how they got through those dark moments.
Right.
What their treehouse looked like.
Yeah.
And, like... What'd you have in there?
Yeah.
What'd you eat?
The
How'd you do
treehouse.
that? Yeah.
Yeah. And I thought about a session that Catherine and I did where the message is that when women come together, it builds a prism and it becomes magnetic. And so as we connect and we build and we trust each other and we build each other up and we rely on each other, we begin to draw in these beautiful things, blessings and abundance. And we can use that energy back out to teach and to support. So I think that, and that's not only just women, that's just in that specific example, but it's just in general.
Men could do this too.
Right.
Like,
right.
We're
Exactly.
waiting for y'all's spiritual uprising.
Yeah.
We're here for it.
Sure.
Yeah.
We wish they would gather in community and temple. If you're a man listening.
Some of them are.
Some of them are.
Yeah.
They are.
Some of them are. And, I think this is something that we'll explore a little bit more, but, in ancient times, they used sexuality as a healing tool, right? So some of us are doing this in our own bedrooms. Some of us are already doing that, but I think there's something to explore there. Or I think that may be, sometimes we have to speak a certain language for people to understand. That doesn't mean you have to only use sexuality, right? We're more dynamic than that. But I think that there's a place for that. And so I'm excited to see how that's going to play out. So I think there's I think we're discovering, we're exploring, we're figuring out what works and what doesn't. And I think the Dark Goddess gives us kind of, I don't know, a ticket or permission to explore without really knowing and not afraid to go past certain boundaries. And we all have our role to play. So I think it's just about following our intuition and just testing things out.
I love it.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm excited to learn more about the Dark Goddess as well. And we're going to be exploring the goddesses that we pulled tonight, Ereshkigal, the Morrigan, and Tiamat. And we're going to be exploring more dark goddesses. We're going to be learning together. And we'd probably love to have other, local people join us. We have a fourth mic here.
Or maybe we could get like call-ins. We could get there.
Oh, that's dope. Yes.
I love it.
Yeah. So, we're going to come back with more information, but we actually have a workshop coming at the end of March.
Yeah.
Should we say the date? Are we ready to say the date, or should we kind of leave that open?
March.
What do you think?
23rd, was it?
All right.
That's the magic
so March
number.
23rd.
All right. March 23rd.
And we're going to be taking kind of a ride and exploring the goddess through astrology, through tarot, through quantum healing, through ritual, through ceremony. And so we are calling in the women that are ready to explore that and to come online. We're at this place now where we're not leaving anything off the table.
No.
Right? No. So where everything that, whoever we are, whatever we are, there may be some things that you want to leave behind, and that's okay. Once it's acknowledged, you can choose to leave it behind, but it's about facing it, integrating it, and looking at it. So, we just want to say that we're excited to do this work, and we're excited to connect with the women that are ready to do this as well.
Come get messy with us.
For a whole day. There's going to be
a whole day. Yes.
Oh yeah.
Workshops.
Yeah.
We're doing a little kundalini, right? Yoga?
Oh yeah, we're gonna do some kundalini, raise the vibration.
Yeah, you actually didn't mention your kundalini yoga teacher.
Yeah, I mentioned kundalini, but I teach it.
Yeah, totally.
And you're doing an astrology workshop. We're
we're gonna be talking about some dark goddesses. We didn't even get to talk about Guabanse. We're gonna have to talk about her next time.
Yeah,
next time. She's been out here.
Yeah,
because I think with that wind energy, that was almost who that was, and like seeing her symbol, because the feminine energy that manifested for me when I did the hypnosis with Lynette, it was this wind, this like bigger than all of it. But it was like almost like that energy. And she had this symbol. She didn't have a name. She had an image. And I think when I drew it and I looked back at Guabanse and her sigil and her symbol, there were some, I'm not saying it was like on exactly, but there were some parts that I was like, oh yeah, there was something there.
Right.
So
so we're going to be coming out with more information around the retreat. And if you guys have any questions about the retreat, you can contact us. We're going to be posting our contact information. So we totally welcome any questions around that or anything that just came up around our conversation today.
It's going to be a full day of diving deep together and sharing space. And we've got the tools to kind of get us into that space. But it's a circle, and we want you to be a part of it.
Yeah.
Bring your story, bring your whatever was in your treehouse, bring your survival stories. We're just going to kind of hold space together. And I'm really excited to just like energetically tune up.
Yeah. And I know we're going to be creating something that you're going to be able to go home and go into your life and have some practical information that you can begin to implement. You're going to feel different. You're not going to leave that day with us feeling the same. We have spent a lot of time working through that to make sure that you get something of value. But the point is you're going to have somewhat of, I don't want to say a game plan, but you're going to have new tools, new perspective. So you're going to definitely be able to go into your life and begin to implement the things that you learned.
Yeah. And I mean, one of the values of gathering together, I mean, you can learn a lot online, you can plug in online and, you know, connect with people and discover information. But when you share space with other women, that is when deeply transformative work occurs and echoes into other parts of your life.
Yeah.
Agreed.
When you can like be face to face, like looking in each other's eyes, like seeing them as more than a profile picture, or you know what I mean?
Right.
It's like you can really feel somebody's energy. You can really dial in with them. You can feel touch, you know, you can receive a hug and exchange affection and support in that physical way, which I feel like a lot of women and just people in general were sort of like shamed, like don't touch me. I mean, like, you know, if I don't like you, don't touch me. But we want to walk away from this at least wanting to give handshakes and maybe a hug.
No doubt.
Because as women, we're emotional beings.
Yeah, we're touchers.
Yeah.
Sometimes.
Yeah.
Especially with people that we care about and love. And I feel like bringing together in sisterhood, and especially with people who you may not associate with in everyday life, you know, to come together for a deeper purpose.
Yeah. It's going to be dope.
I can't wait. I'm so
I
excited.
can't wait. But yeah, so we're going to close up this session of the Dark Goddess podcast, and we will resume hopefully soon with another little
I feel like
tidbit.
this was a good intro.
It was.
Yeah.
I feel good about
Yeah.
it.
Yeah.
I'm good. I can't see what to talk next. I can't wait to talk next.
Once we get going, though, we're probably just going to like,
Yeah.
we're not going to be able to stop.
No. All right. Thank you.
All right,
guys.
thank you.